Hello to everybody and a warm welcome to this edition of the German-Italian Dialogues. Today we will talk in English as to give even our European public, larger European public, the possibility to follow our talk. Today we have Enrico Giovannini with us, founder and speaker of ASVIS, the Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development. I'm very happy to say hello to Enrico today. Enrico has really a very long CV and a remarkable career, and I might get lost in telling you all the steps he made. I just want and have to mention a few of them. He is full professor at the Rome University Tor Vergata, professor of public management at the LUISS in Rome, member of the Club of Rome. He was director of the Statistic Directorate at the OECD, president of the Italian Statistic Institute ISTAT, and in 2013-14, Minister of Labor and Social Policies in the cabinet of Enrico Letta. Since then, he dedicated to a new project, which we want to discuss today, which is sustainability. He is founder and promoter and today's speaker of ASVIS, the Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development, which was founded in February 2016.
Exactly. Yes, hello, Enrico. So today, a very warm welcome to you. We decided to do this talk today in English to give even our European public, the larger one, the opportunity and possibility to follow this German-Italian dialogue. And I already introduced you a little bit with all the steps and the various career steps and initiatives that you are doing and running since so many years, that you become kind of, the face and the figure and of sustainability in Italy. So maybe you can even, as we have right now, the May session, which was dedicated to this year's edition of the Festival per lo Sviluppo Sostenibile, maybe introducing, you can tell our public a little bit about the alternative initiatives that you run in this May with 3 online sessions, of which yesterday there was the last one. And then we can, of course, go more into detail about the initiatives that in Italy in these days are done to start to establish, to eradicate more intensely sustainability into Italian society and economy. Hello.
Well, thank you again for this invitation. It's a great pleasure to discuss today about things that are, of course, very close to my heart, but especially important in this particular moment. The Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development, established in 2016, since 2017, has been organizing the Italian Festival of Sustainable Development, 17 days, as many as the objectives, goals in the UN Agenda for Sustainable Development normally takes place between May and June, but this year, of course, we were obliged to move the initiative to September. We will start on 22nd September and we will finish on 8th October. There are reasons why we decided to go for that period, of course, because we will have in the same days the UN General Assembly that will celebrate also 5 years since the signature of the 2030 Agenda and many other initiatives. Now, we have run, as you said, 3 events during this month to prepare the festival, but also to fill a gap between the presentation of our report, usual report on the evaluation of the budget law for 2020. We had it in 26th February, just a few days before the lockdown, and the new festival. These 3 events were extremely important because thanks to the initiatives of the European Commission, Europe and Italy are now discussing on how to design the recovery plan in order not only to benefit from the European funds, but to restart Italy and to have a development that can be more equal, equitable, and sustainable. And this is where also the work I've been doing with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission on vulnerability and resilience became very useful, because, for example, we published not only our recommendations for the future policies, but also an evaluation of the 3 bills that the government has put in place to respond to the COVID-19 emergency. And we read those documents using both the 17 goals. So we looked at hundreds of elements in each bill, evaluating them across the 2030 agenda, but also we looked at them in terms of this new framework that we developed at the JRC about policies that protect, that promote, that prepare, that prevent, and that transform. And here the result was extremely interesting. The first decree had 97% of measures to protect. In the second, 75% of initiatives to protect and few to prepare. And in the third bill, we have 57% of measures to protect, and the other dimensions are becoming more relevant. But of course, not enough. Therefore, the big question now that everybody is discussing in Italy, how can we use the funds that the European Union will make available to transform Italy in the direction of the Sustainable Development Agenda?
And right now, you with others, as I know, since you're even you put forward and pushed forward the instauration of the Cabina di Regia Benessere Italia, which is a steering committee which is coordinating within the government and the ministries to coordinate the policies to bring forward these kind of measures which have necessarily to be coordinated in the various fields. Can you tell us a little bit more in detail about this work, as you are even member of the steering committee, apart from the many things?
Well, this Cabina di Regia, this coordinating initiative, was established under our pressure by the previous Italian government, Conte I, if you wish, but then reinforced under the current government, led by Giuseppe Conte as well. And it's supposed to coordinate the activities of various ministries towards equitable and sustainable well-being, which means the set of indicators and the framework that I established when I was president of the Italian Statistical Office in 2013. And this framework is also embedded in the budget law, because when the government prepares its European style economic and financial document in April, the government has to show the expected impact of policies on 12 indicators for equitable and sustainable well-being, on poverty, on CO2 emissions, on crime rates, and so on and so forth. And then in February of the following year, after the adoption of the budget law, the government has to do a similar evaluation, not based on plans, but based on actual decisions made in the budget law. Now, what we are pushing for is really use the concept of the 2030 agenda in the recovery plan. And from this point of view, it's very good that the proposal put forward by the European Commission goes exactly in the same direction. It's not a surprise, because since its start, the new Commission led by Ursula von der Leyen had decided to use the 2030 agenda and the 17 goals as the overarching conceptual framework for all European policies. In December, as we as Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development had pushed for, they announced that the European semester will look at the 2030 agenda, so the new annual sustainable growth strategy and the evaluation of countries' performances look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Indicators, and now, as in the most recent document issued by the Commission, the European semester is seen as the governance structure for the recovery plans, for the design of policies and the evaluation of policies. Everything fits together. And from this point of view, I hope that Italy and other countries will really embrace this type of approach, because in this way, Europe would be the first continent in the world that has taken so seriously the 2030 agenda to make it really the driver of the coordination of economic and social and environmental policies.
And do you think, I think that is very important that you say, and we have a long view right now as we are starting with this new commission, the work, and it will nearly come close to the fulfillment of the 2030 year when we are closing this semester of the presidency of the commission right now. But under the circumstances right now of the corona crisis, which hit Italy, for example, very hard in a very bad way, what do you, even as an economist, think is there, because for all these transformations, all the reforms that are needed to push forward in this transformation, money is needed. Money is getting short everywhere. Do you think that Italy and the current states right now is prepared for the shift, for this transformation? And even if the Italian people and society, which right now maybe are suffering, simply suffering, and they maybe don't get how to or know how to transform and to follow this sustainable development path?
I'm worried, very worried, but still very hopeful. And let me just quote a few signals of possible changes in the right direction, notwithstanding the dramatic impact of the virus and also the very high risk, actually, unfortunately, is a reality of negative impact of the crisis on economics and social variables and people. First of all, as we have shown as Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development, the crisis brings a big damage to the 2030 agenda. Poverty, inequalities, unemployment, loss of productive capacity, loss in education, and of course in health systems are all objectives, all goals of the 2030 agenda that are negatively affected by the crisis. And the positive dimensions like the reduction of pollution or reduction of crime during the lockdown are unfortunately potentially temporary. Therefore, the big question is how to make the restart of the economy much more oriented to sustainability, instead of trying to jump back, to bounce back to where we were. The idea is to apply a transformative resilience, which means bouncing forward and not back, as Italy was. And I think that this kind of line of reasoning, if you wish, is becoming more and more frequent also in the public opinion. And this is the first element of hope. The second element of hope is that the financial sector is going through a very, very stressful period. And therefore, I think that international finance, domestic finance, will be much more oriented to less risky activities. The sustainable finance was already in the right direction before the crisis. Mm-hmm. And I think that that segment of finance that was the most dynamic one is becoming more and more common, exactly because everybody has recognized that the risks to which we are exposed as economy are much higher than before. Therefore, I don't see any point for a financial company to invest in companies that in few years will be out of the business anyway. Mm. So I think that the private sector will go in this direction, expanding the logic of environmental sustainability also to social sustainability, which means the way in which, for example, companies deal with sanitary measures in order to be sure that there will not be an outbreak again. Mm. Third element of hope. The European direction need to be matched also with national funds. And as people has recognized much more than before the relationships, the linkages between environmental degradation, risks of pandemia, and the way in which we organize our life, I think that a lot of people will make choices in favor of sustainable consumption. For example, cities will face a huge challenge in terms of private cars, because people will not use public transportation. But fortunately, the government has established important incentives for individual mobility, sustainable mobility vehicles, including bicycles. Mm-hmm. And finally, the smart working that we are running, actually we are running home working at this stage, not really smart. But anyway, we know that a lot of Italian companies have already decided to keep on and to continue smart working, that will decrease the pressure on cities forever. So I see that this will change also individual behaviors. Life balance decisions will go in the direction that will go towards sustainable development. Of course, and then I stop here, Italy needs to rethink about the way in which the public budget is spent. Mm-hmm. For example, I'm advocating, and I think that nobody has yet found a counter-argument on that. We spend 19 billion euros every year to finance, to provide incentives which are harmful to environment. Now that the oil price declines so strongly and will stay for a long time at lower level than before, why should the state put even incentives on that? Suppose that we just transform the 19 billions in 10 billions to reduce the so-called cuneo fiscale, the labor costs, mm-hmm. And this will boost the competitiveness of companies who are labor intensive. And then we can spend 5 billions every year to promote the transition to green economy for companies, and 4 billion per year to launch an extraordinary plan for youth and women, who are the most affected categories and groups in our society. Who will stand up saying, no, you have to help me in keeping the price of oil very low, because otherwise I will be closing my activity. You see, the change in the mindset in people, the need to find additional money to speed up the change is something that could lead Italy, as we did in the past, to big decisions. And this is my hope.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It is very inspiring, and these hopes are really, we hope for that too. And one last question, because I think even to our public, I can just recommend to visit the site of ASVIS and to study all the reports and proposals which are published on your website.
And in English also, some of them.
That is very important to the larger European public. And I just wanted, as we are talking here in this German-Italian dialogue, what do you think? Because our two economies are so much intertwined. And me personally, I think that if it is maybe needed that even the European national governments and societies work much more closer together under, even right now, under this protection or riding with this wave of the European Commission, with the new Green Deal, to harmonize maybe even much more the respectively national plans to reach out to the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm thinking, for example, in this German-Italian perspective about a much more close collaboration in supply chain management, for example, if the Italian companies and the German ones have the same incentives measures, or they make a little bit more pressure on the respectively other national economy to help to the sustainable transformation. What is your idea of in this perspective?
Well, you are mentioning a very important, I would say, vital point for the future of Europe and of our countries, indeed. As you said, our manufacturing sectors are really intertwined, and we know that, for example, some of these sectors are facing huge historical challenges, such as the automotive sector. Here, I think, as you said, it would be important to align as much as possible even the incentives and disincentives. From this point of view, I welcome very much the decision by the German government to provide incentives to the automotive sector if they move towards electric vehicles and so on. Italy so far has not established any incentives for the automotive sector, but these days the Parliament will discuss a possible proposal that will go in the direction of incentivizing the purchase of current cars. Mm-hmm. Even, of course, less polluting, but more classical cars. I take just this example as a potential problem. Of course, we know that some national producers have a lot of stocks.
Yes.
A lot of cars on their parking slots, and they are pushing to have a quick, let's say, management of those stocks. So from a company perspective, I understand the point, but it would be important to say, okay, we can help, for example, for the next 6 months, even helping you to accumulate stocks of less pollutant cars. So I'm not talking of SUVs, for example. Mm-hmm. But then, dear company, you have to know that starting in 2021, we will push only electric cars. This means that you must adjust yourself, that you must transform yourself. Now, the problem is that if you don't do that, Italian money would go to increase the imports, mm-hmm. which is not the best way, especially from the Far East, yeah. which is not necessarily the best thing to do, especially when you have scarce resources. Yeah. So this is a good example to show how complex is the situation and how needed is this medium-term perspective, knowing that in the short term you may have some initiatives that apparently go in the wrong direction, or at least not enough in the right direction. But then you have to help companies and our economies to transform quickly, because we cannot keep protecting. There is this very interesting chart, as I said before, of the reshuffling of measures as we move from the protection to transformation. But now is really time to put all our money towards transformation. Otherwise, it will be quickly, we will quickly run out of money just to protect if we don't build a new perspective.
Yeah. So thank you very much. I think that is our closing point, that we have to put the forces together, German, Italian forces, together with all the other European partners in the world, to really to manage and this transformation, and to arrive to the realization of this agenda 2030. Yes, and many thanks to you, and best wishes even to the future work and to Ausbis.
Thank you very much.